So a thing that coming up that you're referring to is this sense of replenishing, refreshing, feeding citta on good food, rather than on junk. And then discerning for you what is that, Not to make sort of broad brush statements, but in general consideration of virtue, the fruits of friendliness, the fruits of goodwill, the fruits of sensitivity, ethical sensitivity, the fruits of stability, the fruits of steady resolve through the ups and downs of it all. And these drip feed, they build up. One's able to manage quite difficult situations. And the Buddha once likened this training to the training of a wild elephant. Where it says you get the elephant that's already tamed, and the elephant rider, the mahout, goes out and into the forest where the wild elephant is with it. It's got a bunch of bananas and something like that. And the domestic elephant kind of comes close to the wild elephant, and just the very presence of the other elephant, the wild elephant. So it's not so rampant and raging. Domestic elephant reaches out his trunk and gives him a pat, wild elephant. Gradually they kind of get close, and then they give some bananas. Wild elephant eventually gets soothed and stabilised, and so then he comes. Then the elephant is properly nourished and fed and relinquishes his wild wilderness ways. And then he says it becomes strong and steady, then he can withstand even the pitched battle. He will go and stand steady when there's kind of, even in the military assault, elephant, strong and stand steady. And of course, it's called cultivation through stages. So you've got to be recognising that, where's the time to feed? And where's the time to enter the fray, and even, sometimes it's not exactly, you have to move in and out, really. Sometimes you're ready for it, sometimes you just got to back off and feed, and remember, get some strength again when you're meeting difficult circumstances. The wise person knows when's the time. It's important that the wise wisdom knows when's the time. Wisdom is flexible, sampajano, clear comprehension, it's alert, flexible. Okay, now's the time to just stand steady, now's the time to withdraw, now's the time to feed, now's the time to rest, now's the time to move forward. Getting a sense of that. And that flexibility is to be encouraged. So, when you get emotional support, and you're entering some difficult, dry areas or stressed areas, or health is not good. Well, can you stay within the boundary of that, what I've been referring to, that attention that's established in a kind of like a bubble around you, around the body, so it's not a cramped attention, and it's not a scrutiny, it's a kind of more attention that has a sense of awareness within it, as listening. You tighten up your attention, the awareness property tends to diminish, receptivity tends to diminish. We get much more into the action, because that narrow attention is very much about reading and doing, and why don't you become more listening? It moves to that mode. Moves from a visual mode to more like an auditory or a spacious mode. And that's much more room for this property of wise awareness to move around and check things out. So one doesn't remain too focused on a particular point. I think I've made that remark several times. But it certainly is quite a strong habit, because we deal with this aspect of life, the close-up detail, attention to words and symbols and concepts. That's not what we do. We're educated people. But it's an education of kinds. It's an education that's aimed into that level of experience for management and business. The education of a forest dweller, much more flexible. When's the time to wait for the weather to change? When's the time to seek shelter? When's the time to go forth? Wider focus, receptivity comes to the fore. So one of the habits and problems that goes with this habit of grasping is forming the person. The person form as Sakaya says, I'm inside all this, the world's out there, I'm inside this, and I've got to somehow manage it. And it looks for a set solution, like, okay, this is it, now I know what to do. And it loses flexibility. The person tends to seek stability. It's a program that seeks to learn a set of programs it can rely upon, steady, and it'll be certain. And it's always going forward. It's always solid. It's always okay. It seeks that. It doesn't like to not feel okay. It doesn't like to not know what to do. It does not like that at all. It doesn't like spaciousness. It feels a bit restless within that. Definitely does not like painful feeling. Wants to resist and fight against it. We want the person form seeks the permanent, satisfactory, and self. And naturally, this is a recipe for some disappointment. But that's a very strong habit, and the whole culture is built around that. But it's not actually an entity at all, it's a habit. And so, I'm not saying you're denying, some sense of self can be there, and it's said that one becomes skilled in self, developed in terms of self. This is a phrase that's used in the sutras. It means you kind of, you've got your wits about you. And you know when you're getting stuck. So you can call it, it's not really a person, it's something, an intimate subjective quality, pachatang, realizable intimately. And it knows, the property of mindfulness is not present. The property of joy is not present. Wait a minute. Looks like. Better, begin to check the whole piece so we open up. And the very fact, just this sense of opening and lifting off the topic, sometimes this in itself is already remedial. It's just that. Okay, well everybody gets this. This is the territory we're in now. Everyone gets the sadness or the shock or the pain, okay. Part of the territory of being human. So, that may not seem great news, but it does help to prevent the person clamping on that experience. That form clamping on that experience. And then when you clamp on it, then that's the recipe for pain, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, despair, depression, hopelessness, and so forth. So in the first sense, in being a support to oneself and to others, is to be able to, depersonalize without losing intimacy. Definitely I'm feeling it, definitely just feeling it. It's not just saying, so what? No, because we're cultivating the root quality of empathy. So remember these three forms: renunciation, ability to drop something, very important, non-brutality, non-violence, not to push, fight, and then non-cruelty, means that we are sensitive, sympathetic. These are very important bases. So, and the person tends to lose sympathy because the person acts as like an internal experience which solidifies. There's only me. There's a world out there which is hostile or unfeeling or uncaring or whatever, and we're in that capsule. And this limits the potential, the emotional potential, the heart potential to move out through that boundary, that self-boundary. So the person actually is a reduction in empathy. That's one of the features of it. As we see when people adopt a fixed view, strongly personal, really holding on, that's definitely right, I'm right, this is the only way it's going to be. Well, what's the sense of empathy that's going to happen there? Zero. They're really solid, they're really convinced, they really believe this is the right way, absolutely, that's what I take my stand on. I'm one of those. Okay. Zero empathy with anything other than me and mine. This leads to a kind of, in some sense, a sort of a obsessive, even narcissistic view. And then in that position, the righteous person, the right person, is almost spoiling for a fight. Because they experience themselves as the right, surrounded by the wrong. Or that which doesn't agree, And again, hey, hello. This is the personal person form. It's only a form, but it's a very dominant form, and it can get very intense. And it really works about views and ideologies are very ripe food for the person. And it's spring-loaded. I remember I mentioned this a while back. I went to a dentist, sitting in the dentist waiting room, and I'm sitting there. It's a little waiting room in dozy Midhurst, nothing happening, little town. So what? Just sitting there in this dentist waiting room. And suddenly the door opens. This woman comes, looks at me, and says, "I'm a member of the Catholic Church, and I believe that." I'm thinking, what? So she sees this thing and immediately has to jump into religious identity to defend herself against a satanic force sitting in a chair in a dentist waiting room. And so I just sort of chuckled. She said, "What's so funny about that?" I said, "Well, it's just that we just sit in a dentist waiting room. I just find it surprising." And so she gives me another line. Gives me another line of righteousness. I think, okay, this is not going anywhere. It's always sad, really, you know. I've got no issues with this person. We should come here to get a teeth fixed. Can't we share that? The Catholic teeth or Buddhist teeth. You know, these positions, the person needs to kind of defend themselves or find stability in a world that's very unstable. Understood. But look what it causes, what it results are. And maybe some of that instability that we experience around us is because of the way we're not finding balance within that. Sort of something in us is cutting ourselves off. So what we call around us becomes a neglected area. Now, you know, you may... This is where this internal-external thing that consciousness provides is a drawback. And why that recommendation, it's not an act of charity, a sense of sympathy and compassion for all beings. It's a great idea, but, you know, what it's saying is not even, you know, other people in a geographical sense, but just a sense of whatever's around me psychologically. I'm sensitive to that, opening to that. So we may feel ourselves in a jam, for example. I'm really in a jam. I'm in a bad mood. Where's that? It's not visual, is it? It's psychological. I'm in a tough situation. I'm in a difficult space right now. We use these terms to refer to our psychological environment, and something then will tend to try to hold out against it, or force through it, or blame it on myself, or other people, or the past, or the future, or wherever. I mean, it's still that the personal is still besieged within a psychological, emotional environment they're finding very unable to reach, to manage. And that's, yeah. But staying in that will not deal with it. In fact, it becomes, that person, that besieged person becomes a life form. And then, of course, at some time or other, you know, it's going to break down. We come in as life on our backs, helpless. We go out, similarly. And there's a period in between the two where things are definitely, you've got to realise your helplessness, and on a conventional level, vulnerable. Okay, so then, rather than kind of defend against that, just opening gently. And the quality of opening itself has got quite a healthy feeling to it. Just relaxing the tension, relaxing the attitudes, I should be, I can't. Maybe that itself, that boundary itself, is creating the problem, or one of the conditions that creates the problem of emotional bleakness. So we consider that to be something that's protecting us, but it's actually part of the problem. And if that can soften a little, and sense of some space, where before there was just a resistance, we sense there's some space. And the citta, which has been compressed, starts to unfold. If you're just in the unfolding of the citta, to me what seems to be difficult, the tonality of it drops. Because of course the difficult stuff is being fed by the constriction of the citta, constriction of the heart. Now, if that constricted state is softened, softened, the quality of non-constriction, I think it's quite both changes the tension and the contraction into something softer. And that is already an agreeable, not just agreeable, but skillful shift. There's a little bit of room to breathe here, move around. And maybe we'll get through this, maybe things will pass. Maybe there's a lot more maybe and less definite. And that's good. And then some of the personality psychologies, which are deal with it, fix it, get rid of it, change it, become something else, that those reflexes start to, maybe you don't do that right now. Just enjoy, just rest in that ability to soften, be receptive. And that opens a space whereby the afflictive feelings, kind of which seem to be coming in like arrows, begin to dissolve. Or melt, become softer. Think, oh, it's just uncomfortable. Oh, it's just me feeling nervous. I always feel nervous. It's just an issue, just let it pass. So that wider perspective occurs. This is a change. Now I'm no longer so emotionally frozen. And that change is, we begin to recognize that really the internal, external boundaries actually, in terms of citta, in terms of sense consciousness, yeah, that's kind of works. In terms of citta, it's a problem. Problematic. And generally, the idea is you can operate both. Yeah, conventionally speaking, this is my body, that's you, obviously. But within that, there's a sense of, well, you've got as much right to be here as I have, and those kinds of things. On a heart level, we don't have to do that. And what stops us doing it? Feeling personally inadequate, feeling being not good enough, getting in the way, not being as what you should be, not being welcome, and so forth, or some issue with he's like this or she's like that. So the personalisation of things creates these boundaries whereby the empathy flow is blocked. Yeah. This is very much the basis of what's called the qualities, the apano, the measureless qualities, the Brahmavihara qualities, kindness, compassion, gladness, appreciation, or something, really enjoying one's welfare and other people's welfare when it's feeling good. Like, this is skillful, this is beautiful, I really admire that in her. When she does that, I feel pretty uplifted. Just to see that, not she's better than me. She's turning it the wrong way. Jealousy and just, it's great that she's really talented. So forth. I don't have to be the best at everything. Personality says I should be. Not in quite such gross terms, but definitely feels, I'm lesser than him. Those things can happen. So, the apano is another way of, actually the way that these four cultivations are referred to, really, basically is apamano. The Brahmavihara is a kind of a poetic reference to it. This is a sublime abiding in the measureless. So the measureless is always drawing lines. That me, you, this, that, better, worse, deserve, don't deserve. It's the accountant. And again, we develop that to a refined degree. So, mano is to do with the mano vijnana, mental, intellect consciousness. And that whole consciousness base is set up on separation. And mano vijnana is very good at that, measuring in accordance with concepts of what's better. It doesn't embrace and include anything. It's not designed to do that. It's designed to differentiate. This is accurate, this is inaccurate. That's what it does. It's not. That's its job. It's useful in certain areas. But it's terrible in terms of emotional management and shifting moods and inspiration and gladness and joy and even goodwill, because I don't have very much goodwill. You just measured it, didn't you? From the personality point of view, here it pops up again. You've got a lot more goodwill than I have. So this thing can just take over everything. So we might begin even, opening up and considering, as an exercise, just recollect any signs of courtesy, any signs of appreciation, any signs of non-hostility, that come to you from others. People look at you and say, good morning. Well, that's better than saying buzz off, isn't it? Or drop dead. Particularly if they actually mean it. And they kind of help you. Well, that's a sign of goodwill rather than sort it out for yourself. And these gestures are quite normal for people to make, and certainly in our cultivation, they're genuine. They really mean it. They're truthful. Even if you just say, I wish I could help you, even that's better than saying, well, tough luck. I can't do it, but at least there's that willingness to, in a sense of compassion or sympathy. So these signs are coming in, and you just kind of recollect, remember. And recognizing, after a while, you get this realization, hey, people like doing this. They really like to do goodwill. They enjoy it. It's not like a terrible burden I'm placing on them. They actually like it. And that sense, again, some of that sense of the isolated self dissolved. You realise actually, when there's any degree of sanity and health, obviously people fluctuate, the wish to be kind and helpful is pretty standardised. If people aren't just stuck in some position. And this certainly is a summoner. You get great advantage because people look at you and think, God, this guy needs some help. Last time I was in London, which I kind of assume, London, everybody's bustling around, suits, ties, dreadlocks, tattoos, pins through their noses, kind of brusque, hard-hearted city. Everybody's zapping out for themselves, and I'm trying to get through London Underground, which is pretty much mapped on my brain from living there, but of course they build all these new railway lines all the time, and they give them different colours. And of course I have issues around colour. I don't mean skin colour, I mean colour. So I can't quite determine which line is which, because it says this is the Bakerloo, the Metropolitan. They look kind of like washy grey, washy shades. So I'm standing at this kind of London Underground, looking at this board. Is that colour or that colour? Is that the Bakerloo or is it the Metropolitan? Or is it... I got the black, I got the blue, I got the yellow. What's that one? I'm standing there scrutinising this, and this fellow comes up and says, "You look lost." I said, "I'm always lost." Fortunately, he didn't take that as a bragging, about my lack of self-view. So I said, "Oh, can I help you? Where do you want to go?" So I said, he said, "Look, if I was you take this station and you won't have to climb up the stairs." Which was kind. He obviously saw, here I'm carrying bags, and just a sweet gesture, and showing me the right station and get on that one. Then you don't have to clamber up the stairs carrying a bag, and you go across the other side. And then that was it, off. And I find it's quite interesting, quite beautiful, because it generally happens in railway stations and airports where I'm stuck, looking confused, which is my standard experience, so I can't see what's going on. I'm just about to get on the wrong train in some country. I was in Holland the other year, and they gave me this ticket, which I had a ticket. I'm at Schiphol Airport, and what do I do with this ticket? I stand around looking what other people are doing, and I go up to this kind of... They slap this ticket on a little plate, and the gate's open. Okay, I got that, slap the ticket on, gate opened. Go through the gate, that's wonderful, this magic ticket. Then I've got to get on the right train. I'm looking at these maps of, what's that, Nijmegen, Aachen, this train. I want to get to this town that's on that line, maybe I'll get this one or that one. So I'm trying to get this train, what the right one, train comes in. It looks like it's going in the right direction, so I kind of, about to get on the train, this woman looks at me, says, looks at my teeth, "Don't get on that train." She says, "Stay off the train." Okay. And so I wait, and then next train, somebody says, "Oh, get on that train." Okay, yeah, I get off the other end, and these young men start wanting to carry my bags down a flight of stairs. I think, pretty amazing country it is. Somebody wants to actually I didn't ask, they want to carry my bag. There's this, I don't know them. But, in a way, someone is a person who stops the straight lines, who's not efficient, not effective, doesn't know the game. And and it means other people stop their straight lines, they rush to this, they rush to that, and they become, when they're off the straight line, they suddenly become human and open and recognise we're all living in a wilderness, and let's give this guy a hand. And once we realise that, we're all in the wilderness, rather than what it looks like, straight lines everywhere. And that straight line very much enforces the isolated self who lives in that tunnel, going to their destination. Everything else is getting in my way. You see it happening on streets and roads, people getting angry in cars because somebody's getting in my way. Come out, get off the street, get out of the bubble, open up. In a sense of opening, these qualities of sympathy and empathy start to suffuse gently. even if we're not, we're sitting in a meditation or we're not in a railway station, people aren't talking to each other, still, you enter your difficult places and stop the measuring, or resist the measuring, resist the clamping to get over it, or defend yourself, or blame yourself, or go through the narratives. From that wider perspective, what's happening is difficult energy, difficult mood, difficult influence suffusing the heart, and that wanting to get away from it, or wanting to pull out of it. And this is the place where you learn to meet and open just a little, and with a question, if you like, how does this feel? So that's already a sympathetic question, isn't it? How does this feel? What's needed? Without having an answer. And those two questions just help to lift citta out of the murk. See, that's just the subsiding of that self-boundary. And it's essential, in my opinion, because in subsiding that, the measuring mind subsides or backs off. We're much more into the territory of citta, heartfulness. It's very subtle. And you connect that breathing. So breathing acts as a kind of, in any internal rhythmic movement like that, acts as a sort of an amplifier. Because the emotional energy and the internal body energy run on the same channels, so holding the impression of opening, non-aversion, breathing, and particularly giving more attention to the ending of the breath, of each breath. So this is a kind of a tip, if you like. The most important pieces to establish are right when the in-breath is trailing out, when the out-breath is trailing out. Because that's the place where energy shifts. It turns from an active mode into an open mode, and then turns into action again. So the breathing out is energy moving, comes the end of the out-breath, energy opens, it's not moving, it's kind of subtly suffusing, and the in-breath comes in. That's a discharge place, where that which has been stressed or tangled or begins to, that. In-breath comes in, and then get to the end of the inhalation, same thing, the same phase as opening. And again, that opening has it helps the energies to reorganize themselves from the constricted place of pressure, I've got to do it, or I am this, I'm not that, into this way of thinking is just not relevant. It's not relevant, it's actually damaging. That's just the opening. Because with that opening, there's a sense of the boundary subsides. Energy moves freely, gently, softly. And we are, in very obvious ways, we're dissolving the internal out external boundary, aren't we? Because you have to breathe out into something and you breathe in from something, even on a basic physical level. And psychologically it's that I open, I receive. I empty, I let go into something bigger. The energy and the what we detect within that, what we can sense within that sense of real releasing and relinquishment of willpower and boundary and measuring control. That is definitely an abiding, like a vihara, where these transformative qualities of goodwill and compassion, appreciation, equanimity, they start to build up by themselves. You don't exactly do them. You can say the chitta doesn't obey orders. You can't tell it to be gladdened, but you can generate the sign that will be a supportive condition for that. And you relinquish the sign that blocks it. Because actually these measureless states, they're not kind of refined special states. They are the norm for a healthy heart, healthy citta. That's the norm. That's when we go to when the things are properly settled. And we lose it through pressure and fear and worry and aversion and stuff that jangles us around. So then the citta gets very dented and contracted, and then it starts to get very upset. You get the wild elephant crashing around, slumping around, grumping around. Getting upset and angry. Okay. You can't start blaming a wild elephant, but you create a proper place for it to return to something more healthy and sustaining. And when you get a hint of that sense of emotional balance, this is nothing, not some wonderful creation, this is just emotional balance. Why should one feel ill will? It's painful. Get stuck in it, and then, it's just the nature of the boundary, the self-boundary, is a condition to support that. We don't realise that. We haven't seen it. So we don't realise that something like that, which doesn't seem to be ill will, is a condition that supports it. Supports me and mine, and them and them, and then the loneliness, or the judgment, or the feeling isolated, or whatever. That means one is cut off from proper health. So when we kind of bear some of these points in mind, and you walking, standing, sitting, moving around, where's the edge? It's so it's quite common, for the meditation paradigm to be a kind of a closing in, to deal with my mind, which is inside me. We say we go inward. I wouldn't make too much out of that expression. And the Buddha says you don't cling internally, don't cling externally. And ideally, internal, external meeting together, dissolving those. And it's just unified field. So often refers to those two places, and whichever, skillful dhammas, unskillful dhammas arise in any of these fields. Doesn't matter, because they're actually not separate. They support each other. And if the boundaries can be softened and erased, that softening allows for the skillful to begin to come through. So this boundary is created, in terms of time. I'm here now, we want to be in the future. There's a boundary. What does that do? Worry, expectation. Boundary, other people, huge, very strong one. What does that do? How useful is that? When is it relevant, when it's not relevant? And on a sense consciousness level, it has a relevance. But internally, it's problematic. So we look at where that form occurs, and maybe some compassion is needed here, or some lifting from those positions is needed here. And then there's harmony. And of all things that the Citta loves, harmony is supreme. And it's where things begin to regenerate. Broken things become whole again. Foes become amicable. Problems become acceptable pieces of the landscape that we can learn from. Problems become something we say, this is a place for us to learn a bit of this and that and the other, rather than anything else, Even sickness. Some occasionally get these summoners who have very chronic illness, and people would barely do much at all. And certainly some of my people I really quite admire, because I've been good health primarily. People who kind of lie around most of the time because they're too sick. And then practicing, say, just practice non-aversion, non-pity, non-self-pity, and non-complaining, and hold awareness over whatever is being experienced with those bases in mind. No resistance, no fretfulness, no complaining, just removing those. And so that's the only way I get any relief. And then I have to do that, I think suddenly something in awareness starts to open, and the painful, uncomfortable condition, it's there, but it's no longer trapping me. That's what I can do. I'm no longer trapped by it. It's teaching me about humility, patience, and goodwill. Therefore we see all our problems, all our challenges, which are challenges, held rightly, turn arrows into flowers.